This video was made possible by Skillshare. Learn what you want to learn for free for 2 months by being one of the first 500 sign up at the link in the description. American Civil War, bad. Captain America Civil War, good. War starting, bad. Star Wars, good. War of the Worlds, bad. World War, good. Wait, no. No war, good. For most. One of the few downsides for a lack of war is that there's not much for generals and the like to do, so they need activities to fill their time. One such activity is planning for war. After all, the US, for example, has only been at war for 224 years of its 243-year existence, a measly 92%. That's a lot of downtime. During the 20s, there wasn't much war stuff going on, only this small 4-decade-long war in Central America where the US was fighting to be sure the bananas kept flowing. And so, in order to prepare for a possible Great War Part 2, the US started preparing plans for what their strategy would be for hypothetical wars with possible contenders like Japan, China, Mexico, and the UK. Now, despite their very public breakup in the late 1700s, relations between the US and UK mostly improved up until World War I, when relations improved greatly after the US did Europe a solid by rocking up in the fourth quarter and helping finish the job. Nonetheless, Britain was still a big, scary empire, by some measures still the most powerful nation in the world, so the US still prepared a plan in the 30s for war with the Redcoats. It was called War Plan Red, and the idea was as follows. Of course, after the US quite boisterously declared itself as not part of the UK in the 1700s, one of the not quite United States of America, that is Canada, remained part of the British Empire. By the 1900s, Canada was independent, but still very much integrated in the Commonwealth, and it had some fancy features like a 5,500-mile, 9,000-kilometer border with the home team in this hypothetical UK-US war. It was therefore believed that the UK would use Canada as a jumping-off point for an invasion of the mainland US, so the idea was for the US military to Yankee Doodle do its way up to Canada before the British could arrive. There were 5 main areas that the US would invade: Halifax and St. John, Montreal and Quebec City, the Great Lakes area, Winnipeg, and Vancouver. Step 1 was to launch an offensive towards Halifax by land and sea. Halifax was a crucial port for British-Canadian trade, and therefore occupying it would greatly slow down the movement of British forces into Canada. From there, a land assault from New York and Vermont would be launched to occupy Montreal and Quebec City. These act as a major port on the St. Lawrence, and controlling the St. Lawrence would essentially split Canada in two, preventing goods from the agricultural areas in the Maritimes from getting to the rest. The US would also seek to control the Great Lakes area around Toronto, both because this area was and is one of Canada's major population and industrial centers, and because it's dangerously close to the American Midwest, which, at the time, was a crucial industrial area of the US. They didn't want the British to be able to set up bases here. Winnipeg was next on the US's wish list, largely because it acted as the center of Canada's transcontinental railroad, so controlling Winnipeg would mean controlling and cutting off rail transportation. Lastly, Vancouver, while lower importance, was included in invasion plans to prevent Britain from using it as a backup port by going through the Panama Canal, and in order to disrupt Canada's Pacific trade. It was believed that if the US controlled these 5 areas, they would effectively control Canada, and this would be a significant enough blow that the UK would seek a peace deal. No conflict outside the Western Hemisphere was planned. Interestingly, this plan included a short casual little line mentioning that the US had no intention of returning the captured territory. Canada would become part of the US. Who knows, maybe they have oil or something. That sure would be convenient. Please give us oil. That being their worst nightmare, Canada developed their own war plan against the United States. They recognized that their own military alone did not have a great chance at defending their territory against the US long term. The general idea was therefore to distract US forces by, as soon as credible evidence about an impending US invasion was received, launching a surprise invasion on Seattle, Spokane, Portland, Fargo, Great Falls, Minneapolis, Albany, and Maine. Eventually, as American forces arrived to defend these cities, the Canadians would retreat, destroying infrastructure like bridges, roads, and railroads on their way back to slow an American invasion. Hopefully, according to the Canadian plan, by this time British troops would have arrived from the UK. Now, while they were far from the most credible threat to the US, some people really believed in the 30s that war with the British Empire could happen. Today, any sort of conflict between the US and the UK or Canada, two of the most culturally and economically linked countries to the US, seems ridiculous, although War Plan Red, the US's plan, was only declassified in 1974. The US won't acknowledge whether or not there's a modern-day equivalent. As far as we know, the American military could be prepping for war with the UK right now. Of course, what we can be pretty certain of is that if the US and UK go to war, the missiles will be flying. In the post-war apocalyptic nuclear wasteland, you'll want to rebuild your social status through humble brags like, oh well, you know, I've been so busy with my candle business recently, it's just doing so well, but I've finally gotten around to watching that Skillshare course I had downloaded on my iPad on how to make roast chicken, and you know what? I think the recipe would work for cockroach. You can do that because Skillshare's iOS and Android apps let you download any of their more than 25,000 classes for viewing offline. With Skillshare, you can learn pretty much whatever you want to learn, whether that be knife skills, Pilates, memory skills, animation, or more. To get started, visit the link in the description or skl.sh/HAI19. Also, the first 500 visitors get 2 months of unlimited access to over 25,000 classes for free.